Hey guys, sound like that recording sounded a little bit weird. I'm gonna try to do a Zoom meeting here. Yeah, trying to do it. I don't have a lot in 26 and 27. I'm gonna do these pretty quick. Just give y'all, just be able to answer the short answer questions, be able to answer those on the test, and shouldn't be too much trouble there. I'm gonna share my screen. All right, so here we go. And of course, the phone rings here. Sorry, right when I'm fixing to start. I'm gonna let that go to voicemail. Don't recognize that number. And I'm going to continue what we're doing here. So let's do this. Okay, so real quickly, I've got the short answer questions here. I'll try to answer these and kind of look at through this chapter pretty quick. So just kind of read through it and kind of go for it. Nothing too bad. The first thing is talking about here, we're going to look at some of the strategies that probably a chapter that could have been added to another one, in my opinion. But right off the bat, it talks about, the two stages, alteration of generation, right? Alteration of life cycles. And we have mainly the diploid structure, and the haplonic structure is attached to the diploid structure in these plants. And what we get is this life cycle here, where the flower itself is going to be the diploid, the sporophyte here is the plant, and the diploid structure here, and the flower then is going to be producing on it, the male produces the male gametophyte, has the microspores, and they're going to produce the pollen. And then the egg, the female part of the reproductive structure of the flower, is going to have the megaspore angium in it, and it's going to produce the female gametophyte, the embryo sac with the egg in it. And the pollen is going to transfer to the male female part. The pollen tube is going to go down, and we're going to fertilize that. Okay, so bottom line there, just talking about microspores make pollen, megaspores make the egg. Remember, micro meaning small, and the pollen grains are very small. Flower, we already talked about that. Kind of a lot of repeating here. Microspores, male, megaspore, female, mitosis, then produces the pollen grains, right, by meiosis, and inside of that. And then we got the female megasporangium with the seed and the fruit forming the female. Fruit is ovaries, okay? Flowers, unique to the angiosperms, attract pollinators, provide fruit, close the seeds, makes that easy to transmit. It still tastes good, so it's transmitted. People pick up the fruit. Animals take the fruit in, et cetera, et cetera. Monocots, we talked about the two groups of these, and dicots, the two groups of the angiosperms. Their flowers are in parts of multiples of 3, the dicots multiples of 4 or 5. That can be seen in the next couple of pictures here. Let's go to the picture here. We named the parts here, the male part, the stamen with the anther filaments. Then we have the receptacle, the sepal, the petal, the female carpal part with the stigma, landing pad for the insects. And then we have the style coming down here, and then the ovary, and then the ovum with the eggs in it. So that pollen tube is going to go down and fertilize that, and our fruit and our seed's going to be formed there. And then the ovary matures and fleshes on it, forms the fruit that we like. Here we can get that monocot dicot there with the daylily on the left being a monocot, and they have multiples of 3 in all of its parts. And then the azaleas on the right, it's a dicot with multiples of 4 or 5. Okay, you can see that with the 5 petals there. And these have 3 P1s and 3 SSs there. The smaller ones are sepals. Anyway, kind of cool there. You can see that. There's a couple other terms. If they have both parts of the male and female, it's said to be complete flowers, incomplete or missing one or more. And that brings us to one of the more interesting ones. The perfect flower or bisexual flower have both the male, the stamens and the female carpels. Imperfect ones have one or the other. Okay, and another one here, monoecious plants have the stomata flower and carpel flowers on the same plant. And dioecious plants have only the male and female on separate plants, which is kind of wild. So separate plants, the male, female plant, instead of having it all together. So dioecious means on 2 different plants. Monoecious means one having both male and female. And that's a cool term. And you can see monoecious on the left and dioecious on the right. And back to our life cycle once again, showing that development of that meiosis, developing the microspores that then divide and form the pollen. It's going to land on the stigma, and the female megasporangium forms the eggs in here. And notice there's that pollen tube, and we get this concept of double fertilization, which is number 6. And then pollination is the pollen transferring from the male anther to the female stigma. So the transfer of pollen is pollination. Germination is when the organism hatches out of its dormancy, when the seed hatches out. Okay, and the pollen tube, more of that, more on that, nothing much there. Same thing over and over again, it goes on and on. Pollination, transfer pollen from one anther to the stigma of a carpel. Some self-pollinate, others cross-pollinate. Here's pollen, very cool pictures of grass pollen there, really neat. I'm already having an allergy response looking at that. Fertilization, right? When the sperm slides, fills that pollen tube down and we get a fertilization. And actually, this is a very important point. One of my questions, the double fertilization. One sperm fertilizes the egg, we get the diploid 2N zygote baby embryo, and the other sperm fertilizes this polar nuclei, forming a 3N, a triploid endosperm, which develops into the endosperm, which is the food for the developing embryo. So a seed then is the embryo with the stored endosperm food, then a real tight seed coat on the outside of it so that it can be protected for years at times until it has germination when in water or oxygen seeps in the seed and it hatches the baby out and it grows out its first leaf to start photosynthesis. We're going to watch video one night on the pollinators. Remember, sexual encounters of the four kinds coming. You can see that paint bees are one of the major pollinators. They're the main ones out there in nature a lot of times, but other insects and even some mammals are used. Here is a bird, here's a bat, they're used as pollinators. I'm not going to do much on development here, nothing much here. We get on the pictures here, just showing the development of the embryo and the baby in there, nothing much here. Dicot embryo development, I'm not going to go crazy on that. You can take a body class on that. It talks about the monocot dicot seeds. Monocot cotyledon stores nutrients, absorbs others from the endosperm and passes it to the embryo. The dicot cotyledon stores all the nutrients the embryo needs. The endosperm is taken up by the two cotyledons, meaning that's the embryonic seed leaf, is the cotyledon. These embryonic seed leaves, they hatch out, they come out. And there's monocot seed on the left, a bean, and a bean on the right is the dicot. Okay, and then we'll end with this last little part. Like I said, this is a relatively short chapter, just a good read here. Read it, but just don't worry too much about it. If you answer all these questions, we've got pretty much answered those. What's endosperm? That's food for the baby. Seed, we just went over that. And fruit is a ripening ovary, and that ends up with our fruit. So a simple fruit is derived from a single ovary with one or several chambers. Compound fruits develop from several groups of ovaries. Aggregate fruits, ovaries are from a single flower with one receptacle. Good example is blackberry. Multiple fruits or ovaries are from separate flowers clustered together, and that's a pineapple. So pineapple is our multiple fruit. Aggregate fruit is the blackberries. Okay, and then simple fruit would be like an apple. Okay, they can have a thick pericarp. An exocarp forms outermost skin, mesocarp, fleshy tissue between the exocarp and the carp, and that's the boundary of the seed. Then there are dry fruits, like the beans, okay, and some of our grains. Two types there, one where the fruit splits open when ripe, and then one the fruit does not split open. And you can see there is the top there is a peach, which is a drupe. A tomato is a true berry. A legume is a bean, the pea with that fruit. Here is a pine maple tree, fruit of a maple tree. That's the flower there, and you can see the wings on it. And here's a raspberry with that aggregate fruit, and then the multiple fruit, the pineapple. It's a pretty cool little picture there. We just have multiple choice possibly for those. Dispersal, of course, many dry fruits have wings to catch the wind, or they something to stick on an organism. Others attract it for the food. The cherry, tomatoes, and peaches are nutritious for the animals to eat. Okay, hook spines attached to the dry fruit to animal fur. Cucklebirds is my favorite one of that. The cucklebirds on this dog, right? That's a fruit. Here's dandelion, fruit floating, and there's the dry pods split open as it ejects the seeds into the air on that one. So pretty cool, pretty easy there. Germination is when the seed comes out of this dormancy into a growth phase. Can be temperature, can be water, et cetera, triggering it. Okay, oxygen and warmth of enzyme activity, and blending water does that. There's that cotyledon coming out, getting that first sunlight to give energy back. There's the monocot dicot on the left, seed germination, and then monocot corn on the right. There's that first leaf, cotyledon there coming out. Very cool, showing the seeds and how they develop. But not a lot of questions on the test on that. Plants can also reproduce asexually. Stolons, rosal stems that run above ground that become a new plant. Rhizomes, underground stems that produce new plants. And then you got the potato tubers and rhizomes, et cetera. Is that right here? We got some strawberries spreading that way with above ground stolons, right? And this is a new one here. Tissue culture is the growth of tissue in an artificial liquid or solid culture. Many plants are said to be I can't even pronounce that, topiant, which means that each cell can develop into an entire plant. So give me one cell and then we can grow plants back from that. And here is showing that concept of tissue culture processing in plants. Like I said, pretty short chapter there. Kind of went through that. It's a good one to have a snow week on, I guess. And then I'm going to come back here and I posted this week's 28, 29, and I'm going to run through that real quick here in just a minute, get those posted for you. All right, y'all have a good one, guys. I'm going to stop our meeting here. Let me stop sharing. And I'm going to end that quick lecture on that one.